Public service announcement. If you are watching this video or listening to this video, if you are a non-native English speaker, guess what? That's okay. English is a global international language that is spoken by over 1.5 billion people in the world. And I want to talk to you, each and every one of you that happen to be or whose native language is not English. That's okay. Why am I making this video? Well, one of the reasons why I'm making this video is because I want to give my thoughts, my opinions, and my beliefs as I believe what is important with respect to learning English and achieving your goals. For those of you whose language and whose native language is not English, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Point number one, you need to be proud of who you are. You have decided to learn English for whatever reason that is. And see, what happens is that one of the reasons why I wanted to tell you that is because oftentimes, in case you don't know, you are programmed to believe, think, or feel as though that just because you're a non-native individual, that there's something the matter with you. Some of you strive consciously or subconsciously to be native. Why is that? Some of you want to sound, act, think as a native. Well, in case you don't know it, you will never be a native English speaker. And that is okay because you were not born in a native English speaking country. That does not mean that you cannot become fluent in English, or if you have a desire to sound native-like, that's fine. But I'm here to let you know something. English is a language, and the tool of a language is to communicate your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and belief. English does not discriminate. English doesn't care where you come from. English doesn't care what you look like. English doesn't care your race, your ethnicity. English is a language, so the language doesn't discriminate. It's people that discriminate. Point number two. To improve your English, one should focus, or I believe that you should focus on your fluency. And underneath fluency, you should have and you should focus on your pronunciation, your enunciation, your accuracy, your intonation. Those are all aspects of fluency. If you want to take your English to the next level, focus first on your pronunciation, to how you pronounce and say words in English. Do exercises, do individual activities or group activities to improve your pronunciation. And you can do that by mimicking people, copying people, understanding linguistics, using songs with lyrics, using tongue twisters. But focus on your pronunciation first. And the more you do that, is the more proficient that you will become. Point number three. Your accent. Many of you out there desire to have a native speaking accent. I get it. I understand it. Why do I say that? Well, for many of you, you watch videos on various different social media that is telling you that, oh, sound like a native, have native accent, be better if you have an accent. Well, your accent is defined, it is the particular distinctive way in which you speak. But here's the point that I want you to understand. There is nothing in the English language that says that you have to have a native speaking accent. That is something that can be aspirational. That is something that you can decide to do because it is your choice. And for some of you, to sound more native-like or to have native accent, you have to do that. Why? Because you live in countries where people only think that English has one way or one sound. But accent is the distinctive way in which you speak. And when you say that you want native speaking accent, you might want to ask yourself the question, which accent do you want? But again, accent is something that's aspirational. And please be mindful or think about, wait a minute, if I did this video for the rest of like this, or if I spoke like this and decided to do this video, or if I happen to speak like this, accents represent the diversity of the English language. And some of you, with all due respect, are trying to have an accent that is not you, that is fake, that is not real.
I just say
I think you said that if you play it back. If you play it back.
But I understand it, because most of you are programmed to think that, oh my God, if I don't sound like a native, if I don't have native accent, that there's something the matter with me. Oftentimes in the industry, we hear this terminology called native speakerism. Native speakerism is real. It exists. And personally, I can't necessarily change the world. I can only change myself. Native speakerism exists. But you who are watching this video and listening to this video, you have an opportunity to decide, first of all, if you recognize that's real. And second of all, if you do, that's great. If you don't, that's fine. But have you ever thought of the relationship between native speakerism and accent? I got a question for you, something to think about. How does it make you feel, or what do you think when you hear and watch videos from various different content providers that say accent reduction, modified accent, accent coach? How does that make you feel? What do you think of? Is there a relationship, again, between native speakerism and those terminologies? Reduce your accent, accent modification. And again, the choice is yours to do that in terms of whether or not whatever you want to do with respect to your accent. But again, the English language is a goal of communication. It is not the language that discriminates, it is people that discriminate, and you have to make a determination what works best for you. So my last point is the following. English is an individual journey, and you have to figure out what way works best for you. You have an opportunity to look in the mirror, ask yourself tough questions, questions that maybe you've thought about or haven't thought about. But maybe if you thought about these questions, maybe it is too hurtful, or it's something you can't think about, or something you don't want to think about. Imagine, most of you listening to this have been told from a very young age, or from the time you have started learning English, in whatever degree you are, however old you are, whatever age you are, and whatever level you are, is that some of you aspire to be a native English speaker, because that's all that you hear and that's all that you think. And subconsciously or consciously, you internalize that, or there are some people that I know that internalize that think, oh my God, there's something the matter with me. And they spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to possibly be something that they are not. And that might be, for some of you, too difficult to hear. Or perhaps that might be the first time you're hearing that. it reminds me of when I'm thinking of Star Trek, and I'm a Star Trek fan. And I remember in Star Trek, they were talking about there's a famous character called the Borg, and they say, resistance is futile. So maybe I'm saying something to you that you can relate to, but you can't relate because your whole life you've been told to be something you aren't. And then I say this, it's okay. You're a non-native speaker. Be yourself, be proud of who you are, focus on your clarity, your enunciation, and in your brain, you're like, oh, I can't hear that. Well, ultimately, the choice is yours. I want you to remember this. You are a non-native English speaker. And guess what? That's okay. Be proud of who you are because you're learning to speak a language. You're learning to speak English. And you have the choice, decision, and opportunity to look at material that is supportive of your goals, to figure out the best way of studying English that works for you. And if you believe or feel or think as though that someone is not being in support of your goals, that someone that is not being supportive of diversity or not making the English language inclusive, then you, the learner, have an opportunity to change that, to let your voice be known, to do something about it. Because native speakerism is nothing more, in my humble opinion, than a form of oppression. But if you buy into that oppression, then you're supporting the very system that might not necessarily have your best interest at heart. It's you, each one of you, that make that decision that if you want English and the English language to be diverse, you can be that change. And you need to understand something. There is nothing the matter with preference. If you prefer one particular method, one particular teacher, for whatever reason it is, or are, whatever those reasons are, that's fine. But please be mindful that there's a difference between preference and bigotry and discrimination. Why do I say that? Well, for some of you, when you only want to learn English from one particular person, from one particular region, and then what happens is that you will discriminate against those other individuals. I don't want that teacher because they're from here, or I don't like that sound of that accent. So these are opportunities for you to think about. Thank you very much for listening. Let me know what you think in the comments section. This is Teacher Will. This is the place where you and we learn together. How? Through motivation, inspiration, through English. And that inspiration, motivation begins with you. Click on that subscribe button. Let me know what you think of the video in the comments section. And remember, if you are a non-native English speaker, that's okay. Be proud of who you are.